a colossal mass of wires and eyes. The foolish wish for immortality, encased into one horrifying, eternal, hive-mind entity. A mechanical, digital parasite on an otherwise beautiful realm, doing nothing but consume, going from planet to planet, world to world, universe to universe, until there is nothing left but its kingdom. How did something like this end up feeling like little more than a footnote in the story of Amphibia? Let's talk about the core. Should I have an intro? I know it's cheesy and nobody really does it anymore, but I don't know, I never know what to say after the beginning. Anyway, right, the core. If you've forgot, or are for some reason watching this video without having seen Amphibia, it is the main antagonist of, well, Amphibia. Little is known about how it first came to be, but it's essentially a cybernetic hive mind, a collection of Amphibia's greatest minds, the show's words, not mine. Now, this monstrous entity is first introduced about halfway through the show, and after a long stretch where its existence is given only the slightest of hints, it finally comes into play partway through the final season. So while this doesn't exactly give it a huge amount of time to work with, it's not an impossible task. Across all of Gravity Falls, Bill Cipher only shows up in, 2 episodes before Weirdmageddon? And Emperor Bellos? Despite how much you feel his presence throughout Season 2 of The Owl House, it's only really Elsewhere and Elsewhen and Hollow Mind that actually focus on him, with a small handful of other scenes, most of the time just to build up the mystery of him and the Day of Unity. So while this lack of episodes and focus is an issue, it's by no means a crippling one. And it's not like you could have shown this thing much earlier, with Season 2 being the first part of Amphibia to really start delving into the lore of this world. So far the only thing that could have been improved is a little bit of foreshadowing. Like, come on, it wouldn't have been that outrageous to do a Gravity Falls and slip a mural or symbol of those orange eyes into the archives or ancient factory that Anne and the planters go to, right? But like I said, not a big issue at all, there's no big deals here. Yet. Because honestly, the reveal of the core is a really good reveal. The grand music, the slow and dramatic build-up. We've known from the start that King Andreas was a little suspicious, but seeing those eyes ignite in the darkness sparks a million questions and generates enormous interest in just what is going on here. And then, well, we don't see it for the rest of Season 2. If you accidentally somehow skipped this minute-long scene, then it looks like Andreas is the main antagonist going into Season 3, until, boom, there it is in the intro. And then, in Olivia and Yunnan, this is where things really kick off. We get hints, both obvious and surprisingly subtle, of something besides the giant salamander man pulling the strings. And at the end of the episode, not only do we get an actual explanation as to what this thing is, but we also casually get, one of the most harrowing scenes in any of the big 3 Disney shows. And along with showing up to say hi in the flashbacks of Andreas, that really is all we get in terms of the core as this colossal, demonic, spherical entity. It really only has about a minute of screen time tops. Clearly it's not meant to be the main attraction to this villain, but I can't say it's not effective. The sheer size of it, towering over even Andreas, who has been heavily emphasised time and time again to be a towering force of nature in comparison to every other character. And the show's sound design does a terrific job in what little they have to sell this almost Lovecraftian, bestial presence of a machine. But like I said, it isn't the focus of the show, and it won't be the focus of the video. Instead, well, I think it's time we talked about Darcy. Now, here's a funny story. Fun fact. Back last year, when I'd barely heard of Amphibia, when I hadn't watched it or The Owl House, I actually happened to see a piece of fan art of Darcy, linked to the artist in description. and I liked the design of the character so much, I decided to go ahead and start watching Amphibia. So imagine my surprise when I found out that they have about 2 minutes of screen time before the finale of the show as a whole, if we're counting the beginning of the end as part 1 of the finale, which some people seem to. You know, the funny thing is, if I didn't watch Amphibia when I did, then I probably wouldn't have made my Earth problem video when I did. Which means my channel probably wouldn't have skyrocketed view-wise, so you can thank MikeCatSU for unintentionally starting the domino chain that made this video you're watching right now. Alright, now, Darcy. There's a lot to talk about here, and before anything else, I'm going to start off with what this character does very right. As I hinted at a moment ago, I'm not going to lie. This is one of the best goddamn character designs I've ever seen. Or, well, at least one of my favourites. Like, objectively, you're dealing with an insanely recognisable silhouette, a simple but striking colour palette, and a variety of very fun poses and facial expressions. So yeah, objectively it's very good, but subjectively? I mean, come on. This is one of the most instantly likeable, seemingly innocent characters in this show, and turning them into a demonic-looking Scopophobia Iron Man who wields a flaming scythe and moves their body like the girl from The Exorcist. In terms of design, voice and animation, Darcy is an absolute wonder, and I feel pretty vindicated for having them be the reason I ended up checking out the show in the first place. However, if you read the title of the video, or even just saw the thumbnail, you know it's not all positive, and we're gonna get pretty downhill from here. But just know that this is a really good baseline. Now, let's talk about the downfalls of Darcy as a character. It took me a while to pin down just what it is that never quite clicked with me with this character. Because, from how much I just praised them, you'd probably expect Darcy to be one of my favourite characters in the show, but they barely scratch their way into the top 10, and are at risk of being knocked out from the likes of Yunnan or Wally. So what happened? Well, let's talk personality, because I think that's where a lot of the problems lie. It feels like the writers never pinned down just what they wanted Darcy to be. Are they a cold, calculative hive mind? For a couple of scenes, it seems to be that way. Are they manipulative, over-the-top sadistic and cruel? Again, for a few scenes it seems to be that way. Or are they wacky and eccentric, reminiscent of a certain Triangle Man? You get the idea. Though, that being said, if I had to choose which of these was best to focus on for your primary villain, especially one you've hyped up to be this dark, malevolent force that brings even Andreas to his knees, it would really have been best to tone down the wackiness. Darcy being a dork really neutered all the build-up and mystery and threat surrounding the core, and it doesn't help that the first thing we see it do after one of the most horrifying and popular scenes of the entire show is eat cupcakes and fall on its face. You know, all things considered, it's pretty ironic that the issue I'm having here is that they seem to have multiple different personalities, when considering what this character is, that really should be the whole point. But if you've not seen Amphibia or forgotten, I'll tell you now, that is not the intention. Or if it is, it really doesn't come off that way. There's only 1 or 2 times where the multiple personality aspect is actually highlighted, and honestly, there's some great moments.
Aldrich, your son is losing the will to fight. That weakling!
Just like there, you can tell it's 2 different beings vying for control, even just for a moment. I would have loved to see that further expanded upon. Again, I don't like to go down the what if we did this instead fanfic rabbit hole, but I must say, after this scene...
Shut up, Andreas!
I was really expecting there to be a moment, even briefly, where the minds inside of the core would disagree on something, our heroes using that to their advantage. But that's besides the point. The point is, as it stands, as a character, Darcy ends up flopping in a way that the likes of Bill Cipher, Bellows and even Andreas do not. Not because of their lack of screen time, but because they never quite pick a lane in that screen time when it comes to their personality and just what kind of villain they are. It's like they tried to copy the success of Andreas, and how he was a fun and boisterous character who could be cold and serious at times. But for Andreas, it worked for a couple of reasons. In part because he was a twist villain, yes, but also because that really was his personality. He was a boisterous, jolly king, both when he was apparently on the side of good, and both when he showed his true colours. He only got serious when there was an imminent danger or when he was getting his ass kicked. It made him feel like a real character, despite how over the top he was. With Darcy and how little time we get to spend with them, it would be much better to settle on a focused personality for the main antagonist, instead of this. Like, it's not bad, I'm not arguing that this is awful or anything, it's very entertaining. And like I said, still in my top 10, but there is a lot of potential here that just wasn't lived up to. Amphibia is a story that keeps itself casual and light-hearted for the most part, with the plot and lore drip-fed to you over the course of the series. And if you enjoy the characters and the writing, then that should be absolutely fine. But with a design and concept and background and opening scene like this, you could have easily had something on the level of the other great cartoon villains.
Think it'll scare the kids?
The kids? This'll give the parents nightmares.
Is that good?
It's fantastic.
Unfortunately, that's just not what we got. But it's not all bad. In fact, the battle they have with Sasha and Grime is pretty great, with some very fun interactions and some of the best animation this series has to offer, if only for a few seconds like holy shit, this looks so good. And then of course, Darcy's final defeat. It's a mixed bag. We'll talk about this more in a moment, because this exact scenario is much more relevant when it comes to the core itself finally being destroyed, but while this is a very satisfying moment for Sasha as a character, it does mean you get a pretty blasé end to our villain, all things considered. Like, this is a trope you've heard a million times.
You missed.
Wanna bet?
And with a really strange final line.
You fool! Do you have any idea what you've done?
The way that was worded and the way it's spoken, like, there is fear in that voice. It's as if to make you think Sasha's actions were gonna have some kind of direct consequences. Like, maybe the moon at the end was something even the core was afraid of and couldn't stop, but no, it's way simpler. We'll get there in a moment, but first, Haley Chu gives a couple of spectacular screams, one of which might sound very familiar, and they do save the scene quite a bit. But considering the nature of the core, there is a lot that could have been done here. It's clearly relish having a physical body, which is strange considering I'm sure they could have easily taken over any amphibian over the centuries. But that's besides the point. We could absolutely have tried to go into something meaningful here, like how miserable the cybernetic immortality of the hive mind really is without a physical body, to really contrast against the show's major themes about how everything comes to an end and that's okay. But unfortunately it's all kept to subtext. And if you want to join my hive mind sorry, I'm so sorry. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Seriously, it really helps and I'd love to keep making these. Anyway, where were we? And now that we're finished with Darcy, well, we have to talk about the pretty disappointing ending of the show's main villain, huh? As I mentioned before, I think the ending of Amphibia is pretty masterful. It excels in playing with your emotions like the Pied Piper. Joy, fear, sadness, laughter, sadness, bittersweet, and more sadness. What it does not do well is the ending of what is supposedly the show's main antagonist. You know the saying, a story is only as good as its villain? Good thing that doesn't apply here. The core is boiled down to just being a sore loser here, which could work, it really could. But despite the character now being able to talk, even without a body, its tiny handful of lines really aren't much to write home about. A large reason why I say the core had wasted potential was because as a narrative foil, it's actually pretty perfect as the antithesis to Amphibia's themes as a whole. Because how things must always come to an end, The beauty in them is that they happened, but some things, like friendship, are truly immortal. And in contrast to that, you have this arrogant, god complex, seemingly never-ending consciousness of warlord geniuses. It once again has a lot of potential for an incredibly memorable ending. And yes, I know the point here will be that, oh, the ending isn't about the Cora in the slightest, it was about Anne and the climactic end of her arc. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. Bill Cipher's defeat is absolutely spectacular, both because of Bill's reaction breakdown as well as Stan's self-sacrifice. And Bellos is given an excellent send-off that emphasises his manipulation and blind cruelty one more time, and we can still giggle with glee because of how base Luz is being. But in Amphibia, it's just silent, like it's got nothing more to say. And really the only thing I can think of is it's still got a pretty cool design, before it's finally destroyed and we can all breathe a sigh of relief. There's also the whole fantasy section with Marcy and Aldrich, I suppose, but despite the fact that we're technically seeing the inside of the core in these moments, I can't help but think that the library part is an illusion created for Marcy rather than what it actually is. Not to mention, it doesn't do much to further reveal or deepen anything about the core as a concept, and more focuses on just Aldrich and Marcy. Unless it's trying to show that Aldrich is the one that controls the core, but that goes against the whole idea, so I doubt it. I think the series could have really benefited from these scenes being split across the whole of Season 3, or at least 3B. It's not like it was a plot twist, you don't have to do the whole Mabelland spin on it. And for the pros, well, it would make the whole timeline more logical, it would satisfy Marcy fans who said that she doesn't appear through most of the third season, and as you can imagine is pretty important for this video, gives more personality and depth to the core. Because there is a lot to work with here, great themes and incredible design, and fascinating lore. But as it stands, we just have the core, a strangely wasted villain. I hope you all enjoyed. It seems you guys really do like the longer video format from last time, so hey, decided to go in deep for this topic that I feel hasn't really been touched on too much since Amphibia's ending. Speaking of which, it's the 1 year anniversary of The Hardest Thing as I'm writing this, as well as Mother's Day and for y'all in America, so say hi to your mother for me. I'm so happy with how this channel's been performing lately, and I just want to thank you so much for getting to the end of this. I'd love to hear any video topics you might want me to cover, from the other animated shows or the like. And if you like, well, you know, a little bit of the like and subscribe never hurts, and stay tuned to see what's next. Until next time, friends!